Hey YouTube, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. Recently, in the last 1 or 2 years, so many new cool trucks, crawlers have been released. China crawlers, mostly micro crawlers, and all of them come ready to run. But also the super cool 126 wheelies cheap from RocHobby, and those crawlers have been released under different brand names. You know, those HobbyPlus 1 to 24th, also sold as Euro AV or as Amewi here in Europe. The FMS, what is RocHobby, probably 2, the RocHobby wheelies cheap, the Katana and the HobbyPlus, and the small 1 to 24 RGTs, this and that one, and all of them come ready to run and come with a transmitter in this style you probably know. I like those small transmitters, mainly for indoor, of course. They are not super sophisticated, and those transmitters also come under different names. That's labeled RocHobby, so that's probably from the Katana, and that's the one of those with a button type, I guess, from the Euro AV or from the Amewi, and FMS from the Atlas, and a larger one, 4-channel RocHobby from the super cool wheelies cheap. I don't know how many of those I do meanwhile have. Another FMS, so from an Atlas probably. Those with the knob types, I don't like them so much as those ones with the buttons. They do come as TurboRacing with a super cool 1276 car, and they do also come with the small RGT trucks. And additionally, you can buy those under the name Hobby Porter or TurboRacing in different colors. And therefore you get also super nice small 4-channel waterproof receivers. And it's a big mess. I don't know how many of those radios I do already have, and finally which radio belongs to what truck. And all those radios share the protocol. All those radios, even sold under many different brand names, Hobby Porter, TurboRacing and whatnot, what I showed you here, and some more names probably, they do have the same protocol, and the receivers and transmitters work with all of those models. And there was already the Hobby Porter 7-channel radio for some years here on the market, but that's also a TurboRacing. All this is TurboRacing. That's the brand of the radios and receivers. And now finally 2 cheap TurboRacing radios have been released, which do have model memory, and I think that's awesome, because I really don't want to use my large radios indoors. Mainly I play around with the tiny trucks, testing and crawling in my apartment, and so many different radios. I do of course have more for the Mini C's difference and for the SCX24 and for the Panda Hobby and whatnot. I hate this. I do have one radio for all my helicopters and all my planes, and I do have so many different radios, and changing the electronics isn't always that easy. Most of them are 2, 3-in-1 electronics, ESC and receiver sometimes, as in the Katana, even a light controller. And so I found a solution for me now. And here is my solution. The new TurboRacing P52 radio comes in a super simple box, quite bumped, so you know where I bought it from. And this radio, 4-channel, including display, 15 model memories, and it has Exponential function. That's super cool. And it also does have endpoint adjustment. Super cool, not only dual rate. So wow. And this for a really cheap price. If you use some points or whatever, I guess I paid 28 euros or whatever, including shipment. So wow. And this radio works with all those cars I showed you before. The radio does have the exactly same form as the radio that comes with the 1 to 6 release cheap, the RocHobby release cheap, only with display. And there has also been another radio released with the same functions, I guess, with display, but in this form as the small radios. So this one takes 4 AAA and the larger one takes 4 AA batteries. And this radio is called TurboRacing P52. So this form with 4 channels and display and all the other functions, I guess, the radio I do have now has, and that's even cheaper. So far I'm really excited and really love it. Of course it's by far not as capable as, for example, my FlySky GT3C 8 channel is. That's an absolutely awesome radio, or my FlySky Noble. However, I can use it with all those toy trucks, including the RGT trucks, and do not have to change the electronics if I do not want, and do not have to buy super expensive receivers for the Noble GT3C super cheap receivers. It does come with this 4-channel waterproof receiver. Those you can also buy separately. I did already buy several of those. I like them. They are small and cheap. And yes, 4 channels. It does have, of course, channel 1, throttle channel 2, I don't use now. It does have channel 3 here, a push button. You can use this, for example, for controlling LEDs. And at channel 4 here, that's a 3-position switch. So I connected this tiny winch. So that's everything you need, I would say, so far. It does have steering and throttle trim buttons here. And it has a menu that's not super easy, but you will get used to it if you try around a little bit. Changing the models you do simply by this plus and minus button here. I did already bind quite a couple of my trucks. T76, that's the super tiny TurboRacing 1276th car. And as you can see, it works. Binding is also easy. You only have to set the receiver in bind mode, so using a small needle here, or the bind plugs, or the bind button in this receiver. That's, by the way, the same receiver that comes with the RocHobby 1 to 6 Willy, or those bind plugs. However, in the Katana I did have trouble with this bind plug, it didn't work, so I simply used a screwdriver, push it between the 2 pins, and that works. And then switch on the radio, or switch it on before. I didn't really check how it should work, but it always worked. So all cars are now bound to this radio. One downside is, as it is in the FlySky GT3C, the model you have bound to the radio will not only work on the place you bound it to, it will work on all other places too. So you see, that's now the place for the 1 to 76th car, and it works. But if I go to another place, it will work too. The menu does have the channel 3 button. That's not really cool on this position here. An up and down, a channel, and a select. And in the select button, I hope you can see this now on the camera, you can go to the different sub menus. On the main screen you see the voltage of the batteries in the radio, so that's quite cool too. 5 volts only. First is reverse, endpoint adjustment, ABS, exponential, subtrim, SVC, that's smart vehicle control, kind of gyro, you need a special receiver for this, and dual rate, but nobody needs dual rate if we have endpoint adjustment. And the last place now in the menu is the model place, and you can change 3 digits, so 10 numbers and A, B, C, and if it's okay you go to channel and it goes to the next, I don't know, DA6, and everything fine. Now model number 10 is named DA6, of course more digits would be fine, but that's how it is, and for this price I won't complain. And what can you do? I go to the RGT now and show you. I have steering already on reverse. And now I have steering in normal position, and the RGTs were the only ones that had reversed steering. So and now it's on. So you see have to change the direction of steering for the RGT. Therefore I go to reverse, and you can change from steering and also throttle. Steering, throttle, channel 3, channel 4. So you can reverse all 4 channels, that's nice. But we have to reverse steering, and now it's on. And now steering works in the correct position. So first point reverse, second point endpoint adjustment, and that's super cool. I will show this to you now in the small RGT here. Endpoint adjustment, you can also adjust endpoints on steering, throttle, channel 3 and channel 4. So super cool. And you can adjust the endpoints in both directions. Check now. Okay, I have to go back to endpoint adjustment. Left, right, and that means you can adjust endpoints in both directions separately, as you can in every good radio, and this is really nice for setting up many trucks. So let's go back to endpoint adjustment, steering, and I go to left, and you see that's now 100, and you see the steering, and I go and reduce the amount of steering to 35. So you see very little steering now onto the right side, but to the left side it still does have full steering. So that's really super cool, and that's why endpoint adjustment, that's called travel I guess in the Spectrum radios, is much better than dual rate. Dual rate you can only adjust both directions at the same time. So if you make left direction smaller, right direction will be smaller too. Endpoint adjustment, steering, left, right, left, 35, go back to 100, and you can even go to up to 120%, as in my Spectrum DX9. Probably not so good for the servo. But you see now both, again, same amount of steering. So that was endpoint. ABS is off. That's more for racers, I guess. I don't really know how to use this. And exponential, that's the most important function for me, or the biggest plus beside 15 model memories of this radio. I will show you exponential now in the Katana, because throttle in the Katana, throttle response at low speed is not really good. And now I show you also a second downside of this radio, but it's exactly the same as in the FlySky GT3C. If I switch on the Katana now, both trucks will work. So you can run 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many trucks with one radio. I made a video about this of my FlySky GT3C. Could be quite useful if you use a second receiver for a trailer, for example. But now I will switch off the RGT. Is it off? Yes. And we'll show you exponential function in the Katana. Kratos Katana, model number 3. And what does exponential do? It does not limit the power of the throttle channel or of the ESC or of the motor as dual rate does. All those cars that come with 3 different speeds, as the Axial SCX24, the Panda Hobby, or 2 speeds as the Mini C4x4, they only use dual rate for this. So the Panda Hobby even does say it. The slowest position, position 1, it only has about 30% of the maximum force or power, and at the second position, center position, 60%, and only in the last position the car has 100% power. So you get a better throttle response at low speed, but you lose a lot of power. And that's the same with the SCX24 and with the Mini C4x4. But with exponential you will not limit the power. The full speed will always be 100%, but you change the response. So from linear to exponential you can go minus. That means in the beginning power, it gets less power, and in the end it gets high. Or you can go to plus, what we will do here now. That means not a linear response, but in the first part of the trigger pull it will be higher, and then the curve will be flatter, and in the end you have 100%. And you have to adjust exponential separately for forward and reverse. And that's what I really missed in all those tiny cars. Using exponential will not make this ESC to a super nice ESC. I will change the ESC someday to a better ESC, and it will not reduce the noise it makes, but it will highly improve the throttle response. So I will show the exponential function in the Katana to you now. Check this now. I have no exponential, and that's the Katana as it is in stock. And check my finger and the throttle trigger, and check how long it takes till the Katana starts, and then it starts fast. Same in reverse direction. And now I'm nearly in medium position. The truck starts to drive, and now we go to exponential, steering, forward, backwards. I don't know, in a car you probably won't use exponential in steering. You can use this in planes sometimes. So we go to forward, and you see 0 exponential, and now I go to whatever, 100 is the maximum. You won't use this, but 40, this means the curve would be that way then. Now I have 40% exponential, and now check my finger. You see, it starts much earlier, and you have a much better low speed control. You see, it starts much earlier, and that way you can make the drivability of all those small trucks a little bit better. Still, a much better ESC would be and is the better solution, but however, if you want to use the stock electronics and you are annoyed by this bad low speed throttle response, that's a solution to improve this a little bit. So we have reverse, endpoint, ABS, exponential. I did already show you. Awesome. Then we have sub trim, what's super cool too. So not only trim buttons, but also a sub trim. And we have the SVC. I guess therefore you will need, that's a kind of gyro, and need a special receiver including gyro function. I don't know where to get it. And for the crawlers you wouldn't need it anyway. That's smart vehicle control. Oh. SVC. And then we have dual rate, as we have in many of the cheap radios, but I wouldn't know for what to use dual rate if I do have endpoint adjustment. Reverse, endpoint, ABS, exponential trim, smart vehicle control. So that's it for this video. I guess I can store all my tiny radios I do have for those trucks now. Guess I do have, I don't know how many, around 10 trucks, RGT 1 to 24th and HobbyPlus and RocHobby, maybe even more, and the tiny Super Racer. And now I will control all of those trucks, at least indoors, with this super nice and super cheap radio. TurboRacing, everything's TurboRacing, P52, and if it's too large for you, if you prefer this style, then the P32, that's even cheaper. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next video. I'll be back.